Hi, this is Caitlin Finn with CMCI 1010, introducing the topic of gender inequality, specifically in the entertainment business. For my podcast, I interviewed 3 people that related to this topic. Each of my interviews consisted of different opinions and perspectives on this issue. My only female teacher this semester, Sarah Johnson, was interviewed on the topic and how it is relevant in the world of theater.
Gender inequality in the academy is super interesting. It's absolutely a thing. I think it's probably a thing in most fields. I find that most of the things having to do with gender inequality aren't actually sometimes it's overt, but oftentimes it's just kind of things built into the system. For example, if I had decided that I wanted to have a child, I think that would be really challenging at the university as a graduate student. We don't have the same kind of protections that necessarily full professors do. And so there are certain things that have to do with my gender that could make working here more difficult.
After doing research on the pay gap between the 2 genders, I was able to ask Sarah why she thinks this is a serious issue and if it happens in her work field.
I'm sure this has occurred at some point in my life. Yeah, I think it's in the theater world and the theater industry, it's absolutely a known thing. And there are actresses that are starting to post their pay, and men who will say, yeah, absolutely, I'll post my pay because you should be getting paid as much as I am. So in the acting community, I know that's a thing. So my particular position, I'm a dramaturg, is my job in the theater world, and dramaturgy is really interesting because it's actually a very female-dominated position, and so there's actually some conversations that we've been having about the feminization of the dramaturgy field, meaning that regardless of your gender, because it's so often associated as a female-driven position, that the position itself has been feminized and therefore devalued, and that dramaturgs are paid less than they should be because so many of them are women. Very often you'll have a male director and a female dramaturg, and that's seen as a very safe position because the director's in charge and the female's in the subsidiary position, right?
After hearing what Sarah Johnson had to say about gender inequality on all accounts in the theater world, I decided to go one step further in regards to entertainment. Pat Finn, who is an actor and specializes in improv comedy, and also my dad, was interviewed to see if he has ever first-handedly experienced this issue or his thoughts on how it has consisted for years now. Pat first started acting at the Second City, which is an improvisational theater where several people on SNL first started. From there, he got a job in Los Angeles and started his career, when I then asked if gender inequality was present.
Yeah, it's like starting out in Chicago with a group called the Improv Olympic. It was extremely male-oriented, and to that point, almost entirely white for the most part as well. I don't know why. I mean, Second City started at the University of Chicago with, I think, 6 gentlemen and 1 woman. In the way I look at things, if you're going to be on stage and doing skits and sketches and things like that and improvising, I think you're at a disadvantage if you don't have women in the group. But at the time, it was probably, when I was at the Improv Olympic, it was probably 95% male oriented. And a lot of it went to a guy named Del Close, who was kind of the founder of improv as we know it. But the one thing was Del was very anti-women for some reason. I don't know why. And he just didn't think they were funny. I mean, it was almost known women just don't do comedy, or women aren't in improv. Maybe they just felt they weren't fast enough or whatever it was. The group I was in was, Mike Myers and Tim Meadows and Colbert, Carell, and Dave Koechner, Neil Flynn. That was the year, and this is probably 89, something like that. That was the year that things started to change in a drastic way. And it was done first by Rachel Dratch was kind of one of the big ones. And the thing about Rachel was she's super good, she's super funny, she's great, kind, and she's extremely smart. I want to say Brown or Dartmouth. And that, I think, all of a sudden, instead of having roles where a woman was the prostitute or the subservient wife, she took a role, I'm the lawyer in this scene, or I will be the judge in this scene. Higher status roles that women, for the most part, really didn't take charge of or weren't put in those spots. And she didn't do it in a malicious way or I'm a woman, let me do this, but she did it in a way that she took a strong choice. And then subsequently, right after Rachel came Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. Again, equally amazingly likable, smart, funny, talented women. And they were there to make smart choices and to almost kind of bring their generation to where it should be, as far as their women started coming in more because they were doing so well, and then equally they were treated as such.
As Pat's career started to develop, he became more involved, which is then when I asked how it was like to first-handedly see inequality present.
Even when I started out, it was noticeable the lack of women. I mean, we were almost considered, like, other theater groups would call us like the pirates of the theater world because it was just all men for some reason. I don't know why. But when I got there, it was 4 men and 2 women. And I remember even then it was kind of noticeable, like, why wouldn't it be 3 and 3? I mean, it was black, white, Jewish, Hispanic, Catholic, whatever, but it should be fair. Nobody should ever be a victim of inequality, because there's certainly, an amazing amount of women that are hilarious as well as men.
Lastly, I interviewed Jackie Cowgill, who is a looper. A looper is still in the entertainment world, just through a different perspective because she focuses more on voiceovers and behind camera work through television and film. Jackie was the perfect candidate for this podcast because she has experienced gender discrimination firsthand and had a lot to say.
In my business, I feel like the biggest issue with gender equality or discrimination, if you will, is that there are more spots for men than female. So on any given job that I go on, there'll be like, if there's 10 spots for the background voices, it'll be like 7 men and 3 women. And there's really no rhyme or reason. Like, the only time I ever go on a job and there's more women is if it's like a, female prison, or, like something, so like they have to hire more women than men. And I do find that for no reason there are more spots for men than for women.
It was interesting to see that what Pat said about the ratio between men and women in improv, and how Jackie agreed it was a problem in her work as a voiceover actress. Jackie had another fascinating point that I did not expect to hear. This was,
one thing that really does bother me is because I'm an older actress now, even though it's voiceovers, there is a lot of age discrimination for women that does not apply to men. So I'll give you an example. I do specialize in doing younger sounds, but some of the directors and producers now that are on set, they want to see literally younger women in the room doing the job, even though it's voiceover and I may be more qualified and better at that voice. The people on the stage will tell the casting person, I want someone in their 30s, even though it's voiceover. And so that makes sense. But I don't find that happening with males. So a lot of the jobs that are being done, it's like, let's say it's a high school film or a college film. The voiceover actors, they want young women, but they don't care how old the male actors are. So I find that very gender discriminatory. Like, I make less than certain men because I don't work as much, and I'm just as qualified and just as good.
Hearing from all 3 different interviewees, it was interesting to see how each person worked in a different field of entertainment, yet gender discrimination was still present. From this point on, I am determined and interested to find ways to improve women's rights. To start, I asked each interviewee what we should do to stop gender inequality.
I think a lot of it just has to do with being aware of the issue, right, and talking about it. Like, this is great, So it's not any individual's fault. I think sometimes we can get very defensive about, well, I wasn't intending to do something, and it's like, oh, it's not one person doing something bad. It's a system that's been built over, hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's not one person's fault. So if we simply acknowledge it, that's, like, I think the first and best step forward.
Because it's the way it should be. It's what's right. But I think the best way to do it is through awareness and openness and education and just explanation.
One way in my business that we are stopping gender inequality is a lot of the women now are taking control. They're more in a leader position, I think, more than other businesses.
By taking control, bringing awareness, and educating our system, Together, we can end gender inequality. Thanks for listening. Join me next time.